Welcome back, and it's been a while, but we are finally going to be tackling Death Battle again. By popular demand, I decided to go through with it and watch the newest episode and review it, and I will be trying my best to be as fair and neutral about it as possible, but given that this is Death Battle, who knows how long that generosity will last, but I will try my best. So, Mikasa versus Blake. How does it hold up? Well, let's find out. So, to start things out, I'll actually go over the positives first for once instead of going over the matchup first, because this will be the quickest part to get through. The research, surprisingly enough, actually isn't too bad. There is some mild potential lowballing and highballing, but it's nothing too severe. For example, if you take a look at this manga panel right here, it does suggest that Mikasa could possibly be hypersonic speed rather than subsonic speed like they say. Now, I don't believe this would change the outcome by any stretch of the imagination, but outside of a couple suspect calculations, they seem to have done a pretty good job. From what I've seen, there are no major screw-ups or lies. Both characters seem to be around the level of strength and speed that they should be, and they do a good enough job explaining their abilities to where I, as someone who is not overly familiar with these series, though I have seen the first season of Attack on Titan, I am able to at least understand their abilities, especially in regards to Blake. So, I will give credit that for once the research is actually not the worst aspect. But we'll get into some of the bad stuff soon. Another thing that's pretty solid is the soundtrack. Now, a lot of people were giving the soundtrack a hard time, saying that it was ear rape, that it was just too loud and obnoxious. I honestly am not sure where these people are coming from. The soundtrack sounded pretty good. Damn good, in fact. Outside of a couple minor nitpicks I have with it, I didn't have a problem with it. It made sense. It was awesome. It was epic. It was something different. It fit the theme of the fight and the characters, unlike some other soundtracks that they used. For example, Darkseid vs. Thanos, where it was just so out of place, it almost ruins the fight. And I gotta give credit that the lyrics actually match Blake and Mikasa's personalities and characteristics quite well. That was very nice to hear, and it was just a pretty good sounding soundtrack. The woman's vocals were pretty majestic to hear, and it was very awesome to listen to. The only kind of problem I had with it was one of the lyrical choices in the chorus, where it sounds like they're saying that these monsters are evil or something along the lines of that. Maybe I just misheard, although I did listen quite closely, and the lyric did seem kind of redundant, especially in regards to the fact that this was in the chorus, so it does stick out a little bit more. But it doesn't ruin the song by any stretch of the imagination. And one other positive I can give is outside of a screw-up towards the end of the fight, the characters seem to be faithfully portrayed in regards to Mikasa, although they do kind of have Blake act out of character, which I'll get into more in a bit. But considering that Death Battle usually has a track record of disrespecting characters and having them play out of character, it is nice to see that. So that's it for the positives. The negatives, sadly, there's a lot more to unpack in that regard. The first big one is the animation. Yes, shockingly enough, the animation is actually one of the weakest elements of this episode, whereas it's usually the research. So, this might get me into some shit, because there are some people that don't see any problems with the animation. I have to heavily disagree. The way this fight was animated, it looked really bad. It ran like a video game with really poor FPS performance. It's just incredibly awkward. The whole fight looks really laggy, and the animation isn't smooth or fluid like it should be, which is very sad. Yeah, there are certain parts of the fight that look fine, but then there are other parts that just look so laggy. It is incredibly frustrating to behold, and the choreography is not much better. Just look at some of this choreography.
What do you say, Toby? The truth.
Looks like shit.
That's why I love children, no guile. It does look like shit.
Like, are you serious here? I cannot figure out what the issue here. Is this an animation problem or just a script problem? Because this choreography is terrible. It's barely even choreography. Mikasa is just flailing her arms around wildly like she's drunk or something, and Blake is just standing perfectly still, just firing her gun with just nothing. She's just standing there shooting her gun. She's not trying to be accurate. She's not doing any, like, John Wick gun fu or anything like that. She's just standing there shooting in the most generic way possible. What the hell is this? You couldn't do literally anything else? Some sistema? Some gun fu? Or at least make it look like she's trying to aim? This is terrible. And, yeah. Occasionally, oh, they'll kick each other. Wow, if this was a WWE match, I imagine Smarks would be going nuts. Oh my god, she kicked her! This is a 5-star match, oh my god. Like, what the hell? And I cannot do it justice. The FPS is so bad. The fight looks so laggy. It's just painful to look at. It feels like I'm watching this fight on a shitty Dell PC from the early 2000s. I made this joke on my Twitter, and I'll say it again here. What was this animated on? A Mac from 2010? Seriously, I have more fluid and smooth animations than this, and I literally have less than a tenth of the talent and the budget that Death Battle has. What is their excuse for this? How can you justify this? It's so painful. This whole fight is awkward to look at because it feels so laggy. It feels like what happens when a video game company just puts a bunch of crunch and just throws out a video game unfinished, and the FPS is just terrible. This looks like a bad cutscene from a video game. I cannot do it justice. Watch the full fight for yourself and you will see what I mean. This is throughout the entire fight. This isn't just one nitpicked section. It's the whole fight, and it's really painful. There's nothing to the choreography that is interesting, unique. Like, there's nothing that says that there's anything unique about these girls other than some pseudo Spider-Man nonsense, which isn't really all that interesting. Like, the whole point of a fighter is it feels like there's something unique that belongs to them, but it doesn't feel like there's anything that's unique that belongs to these characters, because again, Mikasa's just randomly flailing around. Oh, I'm sorry, at one point in the fight, she turns into Sonic the Hedgehog for 2 seconds. I guess that shuts down all my issues. I mean, I can't believe how bad this animation is. Like, I can't decide which is worse. This or Spider-Girl versus Batgirl. I mean, again, the only parts of the fight that look good last for like maybe a few seconds at most. But once they start actually trying to have choreography, it just falls apart. And it's sad, it really is, because usually the animation is what you come for, and it fails, and that is just inexcusable. Like I said, it's usually the reverse. Usually it's the research that's garbage and the animation that's good, but I guess this time we've taken a step into Bizarro world, because now we got crap animation and decent, mostly harmless research. What happened here? Again, is this a script problem? Was the script that Death Battle gave just really that bad? Supposedly Devil's Artemis animated this, but I just have a hard time believing that, because his animations are usually pretty solid for the most part. Yeah, they could be a little choppy sometimes, but never to this degree. And this is another reason why I say you need to give these animators time, Death Battle, because when you force these out, it just comes out looking all screwed up like this. But that's enough on the animation and choreography, because if I keep going, I'm gonna end up with a video that is way longer than I'm hoping it to be. Now, another obvious glaring problem is, as you can predict, the humor is terrible. It's not very good. We get jokes about clones and Boomstick accidentally killing Wiz, and it's just not funny. And again, they're always awkward because they always bring the episode to a screeching halt just for these jokes, and it's just really bad pacing-wise to just derail the entire thing just for some cheap jokes that are almost never worth it in the end. For example,
I guess you could say she, sold it. Eh? Eh?
Don't try that again. Fire dust clones will explode on impact, while ice will freeze you solid. Though once she runs out of aura, that's it for her semblance too. Wiz? Buddy? Man, I killed him. And it wasn't even on purpose!
Don't worry, just some biological cloning. It's a hobby. Don't ask if I'm the original. I genuinely don't know anymore.
Ah! Ow! Ow! What was the point of all that? All it does is shoot you!
I have many more examples. I am exercising great restraint by moving on. Plus, I want to avoid getting falsely copyright claimed by Rooster Teeth, so I don't want to use too much footage. Point being, the jokes aren't good. Now, I understand that humor is subjective, but let me ask you this. Are these, at best, decent subpar jokes worth bringing the episode to a screeching halt? Because odds are, you don't come here for jokes, you come here to either hear some research and calculations that lead to the settling of a debate between two characters, or you come here for cool action and animation. Is there anyone who seriously goes to Death Battle to get a chuckle or two? I highly doubt that, but please, if you are one of these people, please come and try to justify this in the comments. I would love to hear your arguments. And overall, this episode is just not very good. Other hallmarks are the Blue Chew sponsorship, which normally I wouldn't care about because at this point I'm used to the sponsors. But this one in particular is just kind of uncomfortable, out of place. And Death Battle puts an imagery of Blake and Mikasa in bed during sex, and I really don't want that image in my head, especially in regards to Mikasa, because I don't know about you, but I don't want an image of a girl with a six-pack that looks like she could break me like a twig during sex in my head. That's just kind of gross and uncomfortable. Now, rather you like these women or not, I'm aware that a lot of people considers these girls their waifu, but I guess a bigger question I should be asking is, why is Death Battle bothering to put any kind of sexually suggestive imagery in our heads at all? It's just incredibly awkward at best and uncomfortable at worst, and I don't really feel like being advertised and sold a shoe to me that's meant to help me keep boners and sexual performance. It's just one of the most baffling sponsorships that Death Battle has ever done. But further problems lie in, a lot of people have pointed out to me, one guy I spoke to before I started this video said that Blake, during the final moments of the fight, is incredibly out of character. She kills someone, and rather than feeling remorseful about it, sees a Titan and is immediately happy. Apparently this was out of character for Blake, and this is unacceptable. Now, while this only seems to be exclusive to Blake, and it's for a small moment in the fight, I still find it to be inexcusable nonetheless. Keep everyone in character. Why is this so difficult, Death Battle? I understand that Blake barely has much of a character to begin with, but can you at least keep her in whatever little character she actually has, like you did with Mikasa? I'm definitely gonna have to deduct points for that alone. And the voice acting, I want to say it's good, but it comes off as kind of dry and bland. Now, I'm not sure if that was the intention or not. I know with Mikasa, she's supposed to kind of be somewhat emotionless, similar to people like Levi, but I don't know, it just feels like there's not much in the performance by the voice actors. I don't know if it was because it was a rushed job, or again, the script was just poor and gives the voice actors nothing to work with. And another thing I don't like is the story of how this fight starts. The fight starts because Blake decides to be a stubborn, childish bitch for really no reason. Mikasa tells her to evacuate the area because there are Titans there, and Blake just decides to be a bitch, and then the fight ensues. Like, it just makes Blake look really petty. It just sounds to me like Mikasa was just giving good advice. A little story can go a long way. Think back to Solid Snake vs. Sam Fisher, where they actually made an attempt to tell a little story of Sam and Snake fighting over some intel. Sure, it's not something grand or epic, but it doesn't need to be. It works well enough, and it establishes why the two characters are there and why they're killing each other. But having Blake and Mikasa start fighting over Blake just being a bitch for no reason just makes the fight seem even stupider when you consider that they're not really fighting over anything, they're not really fighting for anything. Not only that, but it makes the mostly solid lyrics for the song just feel kind of jarring and out of place. Wouldn't it have made more sense to maybe have Blake kill Eren or something and have that be the reason why Mikasa is trying to kill Blake? Like maybe Blake was sent to kill this monster and it turned out to be Eren, and this sends Mikasa into a bloodlusted rage. When you consider that the lyrics of the song are all about how these girls are having everything taken from them, it would actually make thematic sense for that to be the case. why not have that? Why not have anything to connect these two characters together? But no. And going into the matchup itself, the connections for these two suck. The only connections they give is they're overly acrobatic and they're reluctant heroes. Yay, that is just weak.
What is your opinion of the day?
Las cucarachas entran, pero no pueden salir.
No, sir. He doesn't like it.
Thank you, Mr. Horse.
Okay? And again, for those who don't seem to understand, connections does not mean similarities. If you look up the meaning of a connection, it literally doesn't mean similarity. It means a relationship that brings something together through different means. And you don't get that when you show that the characters are more and more similar. It just cheapens the matchup itself. Not to mention, this is a curb stomp matchup, and everyone seems to have accepted this. Even while I was watching the episode itself, I took a look at the chat. Everyone was saying Blake was gonna win. Everyone was saying that they're just feeding Mikasa to Blake to get Ruby a cheap win. Like, nobody was thinking that Mikasa might win outside of a small minority of Attack on Titan fans that didn't know any better. But everyone who knows even the slightest bit of power scaling was saying, yeah, Mikasa has no chance. And while sure, the results are technically accurate, when you consider the fact that Mikasa basically didn't even have a chance, it kind of invalidates the matchup itself. This is why I tell people that you need more than good connections to make a good fight. Even if these two had the best connections in the world, which they don't, the compatibility is thrown completely out the window. These girls have no chemistry, no dynamic. There's nothing interesting here to hold your attention in this fight, which is why the fight is so abysmal. Even if the animation was great, which it's not, the fight falls apart because the reason why they're fighting is stupid. There's no significance given to the fight, no story, no character, no chemistry, no dynamic, nothing. And with piss poor choreography, all you have is some decent music that is just completely wasted. Honestly, as good as the soundtrack is, it is mostly wasted. And it's sad to think about all the wasted time and effort on this. For all of you who were excited for this matchup, I'm sorry, but I have to pity you because Death Battle cheated you. I kept trying to warn you that Death Battle would cheat you, but I guess people just disregarded what I said because they thought I was a hater or whatever. I don't say the things that I say to be hateful towards Death Battle or because I hate Death Battle. I genuinely care about Death Battle. I know they can do better, and I want them to do better, but they're not doing better. Yes, there are good things here. I will not deny that. However, the negatives heavily outweigh the positives here, and any positives of this fight that you can enjoy is just drowned out by a sea of negative stuff that just completely ruins the fun. The only other positive thing I can say about this episode is it's mercifully short, and at least they don't waste your time. That's the most I can say, but at the end of the day, this was a terrible episode. My final rating for this is a 3 out of 10. I'm being very, very generous here. Like I said, I will give credit where credit is due. The soundtrack is great. And there is some good stuff here. The research is pretty solid for the most part, outside of a couple really tiny, potentially bad calculations, but it doesn't really change the outcome of the fight anyway, so it's mostly excusable. Yeah, the results are correct, but the results were so blatantly obvious, it almost doesn't even matter. Any tension is ruined by the fact that the compatibility is thrown out the window. The choreography is abysmal. The animation is terrible on account of the god-awful FPS that makes it look like a really laggy cutscene. The voice acting is passable at best. The humor is your typical unfunny, forced humor that just brings the episode to a screeching halt. The matchup is trash. There's just not much here to like, and the sexual implications before the fight even begins puts imagery in my head that I really don't want to think about. Honestly, if you're a fan of Ruby, if you're a fan of Attack on Titan, and you love these girls, you honestly deserve better. I'm not even a fan of these characters, and I think they deserve better. But Death Battle isn't going to give you the matchup you deserve because they don't care. They are content with where they are at. If they actually cared, they would have taken the time to make this the best fight it could have possibly been. And it's not. So before you consider downvoting my video or leaving me a comment calling me a hater, genuinely take a moment to ask yourself, was this the fight you envisioned when you thought about these two fighting? Was there more that could have been done? Is there maybe some truth to what I'm saying? Just at least think about it. But I'm not going to try to be the be-all, end-all. What did the rest of you all think? Did you think that this was a good fight and I'm just being too cynical? Because I know there's one guy I spoke to that thought that this was a 7 out of 10. I heavily disagree. I think this is a heavily below average fight and would have been able to at best get a 4. It's barely even average. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys around for the next video.
It's a trap, it's